The ballroom glowed under 1,000 chandeliers, every crystal shimmering like frozen fireworks. It was the charity gala of the year, the kind of event where fortunes were whispered about in corners and reputations were made with a single handshake. Waiters floated between velvet tables carrying champagne flutes, and a string quartet played melodies that barely covered the hum of New York's elite. Tonight was supposed to be about generosity, about giving. But instead, it became the night a woman's dignity was ripped apart in front of hundreds. Emma Carter walked carefully into the room, one hand resting on her rounded belly. 6 months pregnant, she was exhausted but determined to support her husband. She had spent hours choosing her gown, a modest sapphire dress that flowed gracefully, hiding how fragile she felt inside. Adrian Westwood, her husband, the CEO of Westwood Holdings, had insisted she attend. "It will be good for our image," he had said with a smile that no longer reached his eyes. Emma believed him. She always believed him. Across the hall, Adrian stood tall in his tailored tuxedo, every inch the golden boy of Wall Street. His sharp smile cut through the crowd as he shook hands with investors, his other hand resting possessively on the waist of Selina Croft, the mistress, the one everyone whispered about but no one dared confront. Selina was radiant in a scarlet gown that hugged her body like sin itself, her laughter too loud, her gaze locked on Adrian as though she already owned him. Emma froze. She had seen photographs, yes, she had heard rumors, yes, but nothing prepared her for the sight of her husband standing so brazenly with another woman in public. Still, she held her head high. She told herself, "I am his wife. I am carrying his child." She stepped closer, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. The MC announced the evening centerpiece, the ceremonial bouquet toss, a tradition meant to symbolize prosperity and loyalty. Adrian was handed the bouquet, a masterpiece of white roses and orchids. Cameras flashed, the crowd leaned in, everyone expected him to offer it to Emma, his glowing wife. It was the perfect stage for a show of love. Instead, Adrian turned, smirked, and with a sudden cruel flick, he hurled the bouquet directly at Emma. The roses struck her shoulder, petals scattering across the polished floor like broken promises. Gasps erupted. A few women clutched their pearls. Emma staggered back, clutching her belly instinctively, her face burning with humiliation. Selina laughed, a sharp sound that cut deeper than the sting of the bouquet. Adrian walked over to her, lifted her hand, and pressed the flowers into her arms. "For the woman who truly inspires me," he declared loudly enough for the microphones to catch. The room erupted into chaos, half shocked, half entertained. Cameras clicked, capturing Emma's devastation forever. She stood frozen, breath caught in her throat, tears threatening to fall. In that moment, it felt like her world had ended. But across the room, an older guest rose slowly from his chair, eyes fixed on Adrian, a storm brewing behind his calm gaze. He knew the truth no one else dared to speak, and he was about to reveal it. The silence after Adrian's declaration felt like a storm holding its breath. For a moment, the glittering ballroom was frozen in time, every guest caught between disbelief and morbid fascination. The string quartet faltered, bows trembling on strings, until the music died completely. The only sound was the flash of cameras and the uneven rhythm of Emma's breathing. She wanted to disappear. She wanted the marble floor to swallow her whole. Her cheeks burned, her vision blurred, and for a heartbeat she thought she might faint. But then the smallest flutter came from within her belly, a reminder that she was not alone. Her child was still with her. She pressed a trembling hand against her stomach and whispered silently, "Hold on, baby. Please hold on." Selina preened in the spotlight, clutching the bouquet as though she had just been crowned queen of the night. She leaned into Adrian, her lips brushing his ear, her laughter slicing through the hush like broken glass. Adrian basked in it, raising his champagne glass as if mocking the very concept of fidelity. "To new beginnings," he toasted, his voice dripping with arrogance. The crowd murmured, half in awe, half in scandalized delight. In the back of the room, Mr. James Whitmore, a silver-haired philanthropist and lifelong friend of Emma's late father, tightened his grip on his cane. His jaw clenched as he watched the young woman, his goddaughter in all but name, humiliated by a man unworthy of her. He had kept silent for too long, respecting Emma's marriage, trusting she knew what she was doing. But now, seeing Adrian's cruelty displayed for the world, something inside him snapped. "Unbelievable," whispered a woman at the next table. "His wife is pregnant." "Pregnant or not," another man chuckled darkly, "powerful men do what they want." The whispers slithered through the crowd like poison. Emma heard every word. Each syllable was another blade cutting into her dignity. She backed away slowly, hoping to escape before her tears betrayed her. But her heel caught on the hem of her gown, and she stumbled. Gasps rippled again, and for a split second it seemed she might fall. Adrian didn't move. He didn't even flinch. Selina smirked, clutching the bouquet tighter. It was Mr. James who stepped forward, steadying Emma with a gentle hand. His touch was firm, reassuring, the kind that spoke of years of loyalty and protection. "Steady, child," he murmured, his eyes never leaving Adrian's. Emma managed to straighten herself, but the humiliation was unbearable. She turned toward the exit, desperate to leave, desperate to breathe. But James stopped her. "Don't run, Emma," he whispered softly, his voice carrying the weight of truth. "He wants you broken. Don't give him that victory." Emma looked at him, her eyes wide and brimming with tears. She wanted to argue, to say she had no strength left, but the fire in his gaze steadied her trembling heart. She nodded faintly. James straightened his back, leaning heavily on his cane, and turned to the crowd. His voice, though calm, carried like thunder across the hall. "Adrian Westwood," he said slowly, each syllable heavy with contempt. "You may think tonight proves your power, but what you have done is nothing less than cruelty, and everyone here knows it." The room shifted. Guests looked at one another nervously, unsure if they should clap, whisper, or remain silent. Adrian's smile faltered, just for an instant. Selina's grip on the bouquet loosened. Emma's heart pounded as James took another step forward, his voice growing stronger. "Do you think money hides everything? Do you believe the truth will never surface?" James's eyes glittered. "I know what you've been hiding, and if you dare to humiliate this woman again, I will make sure the world hears it." Adrian's face darkened, the mask of arrogance cracking into rage. He slammed his glass onto the nearest table, shattering crystal across the floor. "Careful, old man," he hissed, his voice low but venomous. James didn't blink. "No, Adrian, you be careful." The entire ballroom held its breath. Emma's tears finally spilled, but not from humiliation, this time from the spark of hope that someone at last stood for her. And then James revealed the first piece of the secret, something that would shake the entire room to its core. The ballroom, moments ago filled with smug laughter and clinking glasses, now buzzed with uneasy tension. Guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their curiosity colliding with the fear of being caught in the middle of a scandal. Emma stood frozen, one hand over her stomach, as though bracing herself for impact. She could feel hundreds of eyes drilling into her back, some pitying, some cruel, most simply entertained by the spectacle. James didn't waver. His cane tapped once against the marble floor as he spoke, his voice firm and commanding. "You all sit here in your gowns and tuxedos, pretending loyalty to a man who parades his mistress in front of his pregnant wife. But what you don't know, what he has hidden, is far worse." Adrian's jaw clenched. "Enough," he growled, his voice low, dangerous. "No," James shot back. "I will not be silent while she is humiliated." The room gasped. It was rare to see anyone stand up to Adrian Westwood, the golden CEO who bent politicians and investors to his will with a single phone call. But James wasn't afraid. He had known Adrian since his early days, when his charm was still a mask covering greed and ambition. "You all believe his company's success is built on brilliance," James continued, his voice rising. "But I have seen the documents. I know how he funneled funds through fake charities, how he used investor money to bankroll nights and hotels with her." He pointed directly at Selina, whose face drained of color. The bouquet nearly slipped from her grasp. Whispers exploded across the hall. "What did he say? Fake charities? Is that true?" Cameras flashed like lightning as reporters leaned forward, recording every word. Adrian's mask cracked, fury seeping through his carefully crafted smile. "You senile old fool," he spat. "You think anyone will believe you? I own this room." But James wasn't finished. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a slim folder, its edges worn but its contents lethal. He raised it high for all to see. "This is proof," he declared. "Bank statements, emails, transfers made under Selina Croft's name, Money that should have gone to sick children, to cancer research, to education, stolen for pleasure and deceit. Selina staggered back, her lips parting in a silent denial. The crowd turned on her instantly, eyes narrowing, whispers becoming accusations. The image of glamour she had cultivated began to fracture before their very eyes. Emma's knees nearly gave out. She had known Adrian was unfaithful, yes, but she hadn't known the depth of his corruption. To betray her was one thing. To steal from the helpless was another entirely. Adrian lunged forward, trying to snatch the folder from James's hand. But James held it out of reach, his cane striking the floor again like a gavel. "Not tonight, Adrian. Tonight everyone sees you for what you are." The ballroom erupted, voices overlapping, flashes blinding, chaos rippling outward like a tidal wave. Emma's heart pounded, her body trembling, caught between fear and the strange relief that the truth was finally clawing its way to the surface. Adrian roared, his face twisted with rage. "This ends now," he shouted, shoving a waiter aside as he surged toward James. And that's when a new voice cut through the uproar. Calm, measured, but carrying a weight that silenced the room more effectively than any scream. "Actually, Adrian, it's only just beginning." The ballroom fell into an eerie hush, as though the chandeliers themselves leaned closer to listen. Heads turned in unison toward the voice that had cut through the chaos. It belonged to a man standing near the edge of the stage, his presence commanding despite his calm demeanor. Gideon Pierce. Adrian's rival in business, a titan in his own right, known for his ruthless intelligence and uncanny ability to dismantle competitors. Guests whispered his name like a forbidden prayer. No one had expected him tonight, but there he was, tuxedo immaculate, eyes like steel locked on Adrian. Emma blinked through her tears, barely comprehending what was happening. She had met Gideon once, years ago, at a charity luncheon her father had hosted. He had been polite, reserved, but unmistakably powerful. Now, seeing him step forward on her behalf, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in months: safety. Adrian sneered, though his grip on control was slipping. "And what business is this of yours, Pierce?" Gideon's lips curved in a humorless smile. "Business? Oh, Adrian, you've blurred those lines so much that your business and your personal filth are indistinguishable." He turned slightly, addressing the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard Mr. Whitmore's testimony. What you haven't heard yet is that I, too, have evidence." The murmur in the room swelled again. Reporters pushed closer. Selina's face paled further. She clutched the bouquet so tightly that thorns pricked her skin, tiny beads of blood staining the white petals. Emma's breath hitched. Could this really be happening? Was the empire Adrian built finally crumbling before her eyes? Adrian tried to laugh, but the sound came out jagged, forced. "Evidence? From you? Please. Everyone here knows you've been jealous of my success for years." "Jealous?" Gideon's eyes flashed dangerously. "No, Adrian. I don't envy thieves, I expose them." He lifted a small black device in his hand, and tonight I came prepared. A collective gasp rippled across the ballroom as a projector screen flickered to life behind the stage. Gideon pressed a button, and audio filled the room. At first it was static. Then came Adrian's unmistakable voice. "Move the money through the Children's Foundation. No one will question it. Make sure Selina signs the papers. She's the perfect cover." Selina's hand flew to her mouth. The crowd erupted, shouts, curses, even a few screams. Cameras zoomed in on Adrian's face as the color drained from it. He tried to speak, but the recording continued, damning him with every word. Emma swayed where she stood, overwhelmed. The betrayal was deeper than she had ever imagined. Her husband hadn't just humiliated her, he had used sick children as pawns in his greed. James placed a steadying hand on her arm, whispering, "Stay strong, Emma. This is the moment the tide turns." Adrian lunged forward, eyes blazing. "Turn that off," he bellowed, but Gideon didn't flinch. He stood tall, unshaken, as if daring Adrian to strike him down in front of everyone. And then Gideon said the words that made Emma's heart stop. "Emma, it's time they hear the truth, from you." Every eye in the room turned toward Emma. The weight of Gideon's words pressed down on her chest, stealing her breath. She hadn't prepared for this. Hadn't prepared to be thrust into the spotlight. Her humiliation dissected in front of strangers and cameras. For months, she had swallowed her pain, painting on smiles for society luncheons and business dinners, telling herself she had to endure for the sake of her unborn child. But now, under the blinding glow of the chandeliers, there was no more hiding. Her knees trembled, her hand clutched protectively over her belly as she stared at Adrian. He stood just a few feet away, jaw tight, eyes blazing with fury. The man she had once loved with every fiber of her being now looked like a stranger, a dangerous stranger. Selina clung to him, bouquet still in her arms, her face twisted in panic. The crowd waited, holding its breath. Some leaned forward eagerly, hungry for more scandal. Others whispered with pity, their eyes softening as they looked at the young woman who had been so cruelly discarded. Emma's cheeks burned under their gaze. James's steady hand remained on her shoulder. "You don't have to be afraid," he murmured, low enough that only she could hear. "This is your chance." Emma swallowed hard. Her voice, when it finally came, was soft, trembling, but carried an honesty that pierced the silence. "For years I believed in him," she said, her eyes locked on Adrian. "I thought the man I married was honorable. I thought he cared about me, about our family." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Reporters scribbled furiously, their pens scratching against paper like thunder in the silence. Emma's voice grew stronger. "But what has he given me? Lies, betrayal, and tonight, humiliation. He threw a bouquet in my face while I carry his child." Her words cracked, but she didn't stop. Tears rolled freely down her cheeks, but there was a new fire in her eyes. "And now, thanks to Mr. Whitmore and Mr. Pierce, I know the truth. He hasn't just betrayed me, he's betrayed this city. He's stolen from charities, money that should have gone to children who needed help. He's given it all to her." She pointed directly at Selina, who shrank under the weight of hundreds of eyes. The ballroom erupted again. Gasps, shouts, murmurs of outrage. Selina tried to hide behind Adrian, but he shoved her away, his mask of composure shattering completely. "You think they'll believe you?" Adrian snarled, his voice raw. "You're weak, Emma. Always have been. No one listens to weak women." The words stung like a slap, but instead of breaking her, they fueled her. Emma straightened her back, wiped her tears with the back of her hand, and lifted her chin. The crowd leaned in closer, sensing the shift. Emma's voice rang clear, steadier than before. "Then let tonight be the last time anyone calls me weak." The room thundered with applause, the sound echoing like a tidal wave crashing against Adrian's arrogance. For the first time, Emma felt the power shifting, not in whispers, but in roaring approval. And then Gideon's calm voice cut through the noise. "Emma, show them the document." The applause thundered through the ballroom, rattling Adrian's fragile mask of power. For the first time that night, Emma didn't feel invisible. She felt seen, she felt heard. But Gideon's words, "Show them the document," echoed like a drumbeat in her chest. Her fingers trembled as she reached into her small clutch. For weeks she had carried it everywhere, unsure if she would ever have the courage to use it. Inside was a single folded sheet, yellowed at the edges, but still sharp enough to cut through a man's lies. She pulled it out slowly, the crowd leaning in, cameras flashing wildly. Adrian's eyes widened when he saw it. His smug expression cracked into panic. "No," he hissed under his breath, stepping forward. "Where did you get that?" Emma's voice was steady now. "From my father's lawyer. He kept a copy in case this day ever came." She unfolded the paper and held it high for all to see. "It's our postnuptial agreement. Signed by you, Adrian." The ballroom gasped. A postnuptial agreement was rare among the wealthy, almost unheard of. The reporters went wild, shouting over one another as their cameras captured every detail. Emma's eyes never left her husband's. "This document states that in the event of public humiliation, especially during pregnancy, you forfeit not only joint assets but your majority stake in Westwood Holdings. My father insisted on this clause before his death. He didn't trust you." Adrian's face turned ashen, his rage spilling out. "That's a lie. I never signed such a thing." But Emma held it closer to the lights. His bold, unmistakable signature sprawled across the bottom in ink. Witness signature sat beside it. It was irrefutable. Gasps turned to shouts. "He signed it! It's his signature! He's finished!" Selina stumbled backward, the bouquet falling from her arms, petals scattering like ash. She grabbed Adrian's sleeve, whispering frantically, "Do something. Stop her." But Adrian shook her off, his mask crumbling completely. He lunged toward Emma, desperation in his eyes. James immediately stepped in, slamming his cane across Adrian's chest to stop him. "Touch her, and you'll regret it." James growled, his voice deep with warning. The crowd erupted in chaos. Some guests cheered Emma's bravery, others shouted questions at Adrian, while a handful tried to push closer for a better view. The once perfect gala was dissolving into a battlefield of truth. Emma's voice rose above the uproar. For years, I was silent. For years, I endured. But tonight, I reclaim what's mine, for myself and for my child. The applause roared louder this time, shaking the chandeliers overhead. Adrian's empire, once untouchable, now trembled under the weight of his own arrogance. But just as Emma lowered the document, a sharp voice sliced through the cheers. From the balcony above, a woman none of them expected stepped into the light, holding her own folder of papers. "Emma's right," the woman declared, "and I have proof that will destroy Adrian once and for all." Every head in the ballroom tilted upward. The chandeliers sparkled against the polished marble balcony, casting a halo of light around the mysterious woman. She stood tall, her hair swept into a severe chignon, her navy suit crisp and commanding. The folder in her hand looked small, but the confidence in her voice suggested it carried the weight of a guillotine. Whispers shot through the crowd. "Who is she? Do you know her? Why does she look so familiar?" Emma's heart pounded as she squinted through the glare. She didn't recognize the woman, but something about her posture radiated authority. Beside her, James narrowed his eyes and muttered, "Margaret Ellis." Emma turned sharply. "You know her?" James nodded grimly. "Senior auditor. She worked inside Westwood Holdings for years, fired last year under suspicious circumstances." Adrian's face drained of color. His fury, once directed at Emma, now shot toward the balcony. "Get down from there," he roared, his voice cracking with panic. "You have no right to be here." Margaret didn't flinch. She opened the folder and held up several documents, her voice ringing clear and unwavering. "Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Margaret Ellis. I was Westwood Holdings' Chief Compliance Officer until Adrian Westwood terminated me for insubordination. What he didn't know was that I kept copies of every fraudulent transaction I uncovered. Tonight, I'm here to confirm what Mr. Whitmore and Mr. Pierce have already revealed. Adrian has been laundering millions through fake charities, all with Selina Croft's signature attached. The crowd erupted again, louder than ever. Reporters shoved past one another, flashes of light strobing across the ballroom. Selina's face turned ghostly pale, her lips trembling as whispers like knives tore into her reputation. Adrian bellowed, "She's lying. She's a bitter ex-employee looking for revenge." But Margaret ignored him. She flipped to a page, reading aloud. On May 14, 2022, a transfer of $2.5 million was made from the Children's Cancer Foundation into a private account under the name S. Croft, authorized by Adrian Westwood himself. Gasps cut through the air like thunder. Guests clutched their pearls, men muttered curses, and a woman in the front row shouted, "Monster!" Emma felt her knees wobble again, but this time it wasn't from weakness. It was from the dizzying realization that the nightmare she had endured was finally collapsing around Adrian, brick by brick. Adrian lunged toward the stage, pointing at security. "Stop her. Take her out now." But no one moved. Even the guards hesitated, their loyalty shaken in the tidal wave of damning evidence. Margaret's eyes locked on Emma. Her expression softened just slightly. "Mrs. Carter," she said firmly, "you don't need to fight him alone anymore. We all see him now." The crowd shifted, dozens of eyes swinging back to Emma. For the first time in her life, the power wasn't with Adrian. It was with her. And then Margaret said the words that made Emma's blood run cold. "Because, Emma, your husband's betrayal doesn't end with you. He's been hiding something far worse about your child." The ballroom's glittering chandeliers seemed to dim at Margaret's words. A hush swept over the crowd, so thick and heavy it felt like the air itself had stopped moving. Emma's stomach twisted, her hand instinctively clutching the swell of her belly. "What do you mean?" she whispered, her voice fragile but sharp enough to pierce the silence. Margaret's eyes softened as she scanned the room, then returned to Emma. "In the course of my audit, I discovered medical expenses hidden within Westwood Holdings' discretionary accounts. Not just ordinary expenses, specialized genetic testing ordered under Adrian's authorization, tests linked directly to your pregnancy." Emma's heart slammed in her chest. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She looked at Adrian, desperate for some explanation, some denial that could make sense of this horror. But his face said everything. His eyes darted, his jaw clenched, sweat gleamed along his temples. The crowd gasped, questions flying in every direction. Genetic testing? Why would he need that? What is he hiding? Emma's voice trembled, barely audible. Adrian, what did you do? Adrian finally snapped, his voice a low growl. This is none of their business. He jabbed a finger toward Margaret. You're twisting data you don't understand. Emma, don't listen to her. She's trying to destroy me through you. But Margaret's tone was steady, relentless. She held up another sheet of paper. Here are the invoices. Payments to a private lab overseas, a lab known for performing unethical procedures. The tests were meant to confirm whether your child could inherit a rare genetic disorder carried on Adrian's side of the family. And instead of telling you, instead of facing it with honesty, he buried it under fraudulent expenses. The floor beneath Emma seemed to vanish. Her knees buckled, and James quickly caught her, steadying her trembling body. Tears blurred her vision. You knew? She choked out, staring at Adrian with wide, broken eyes. You knew there was a risk, and you didn't tell me? Adrian's mask shattered completely, fury spilling out like venom. What difference would it have made? You're weak enough as it is. I wasn't going to let you use this as another excuse to cling to me. The words sliced through Emma's heart like a blade. Gasps of outrage rose from the crowd. Even Selina looked horrified, her painted lips parting in shock as she stumbled back from Adrian. Margaret's voice cut in firmly. Mrs. Carter, I don't say this to frighten you. The testing showed no abnormalities. Your child is safe. But the fact that he would hide something so profound from you, and then funnel money through charities to cover it, shows the depth of his deceit. Emma's tears spilled freely, but behind them burned a rising fire. For months she had doubted herself, silenced her instincts, accepted humiliation. But now the truth was undeniable. Adrian had never seen her as a partner, only as a pawn. Her body trembled, but her voice, when it came, was clear and sharp as steel. You may have stolen my dignity, Adrian, but you will not steal my child's future. The crowd erupted in cheers, a tidal wave of support crashing over Adrian's crumbling empire. Security guards edged closer, uncertain whose side to take. And then Gideon stepped forward, his gaze locked on Adrian. It's time, Gideon said. Show them the footage. The crowd's roar still echoed when Gideon raised his hand, silencing them with a single commanding gesture. His eyes locked on Adrian, sharp and cold, like a hawk closing in on prey. You've hidden behind contracts, lawyers, and lies for years, Gideon said, his voice steady. But tonight, the mask comes off. He signaled to a technician near the stage. Within seconds, the massive projector screen flickered to life again, washing the ballroom in a pale glow. Guests turned in their chairs, the air charged with anticipation. Adrian stiffened, his fists clenching, jaw grinding as the first grainy image appeared. It was Adrian himself, seated in a lavish hotel suite, drink in hand, tie loosened, Selina draped across his lap. The date stamp in the corner left no doubt. The same night, Adrian had claimed to be in a board meeting overseas. Gasps rippled through the audience. Selina's face went white. Then came the audio, Adrian's unmistakable voice filling the room. Move another $3 million from the foundation. If anyone asks, tell them it's for pediatric equipment. No one questions sick children, that's the beauty of it. Shouts of outrage erupted instantly. Unbelievable. He stole from children? Monster. Cameras flashed like lightning, capturing every frame. Adrian lunged forward, but Gideon blocked him with a single step, his tall frame unyielding. Sit down, Gideon said coldly, or you'll bury yourself even deeper. The footage rolled on. Clip after clip showed Adrian bragging to associates, mocking investors, sneering at Emma. In one clip he slurred, she's just baggage. Once the baby's born, I'll cut her off. Selina and I will be untouchable. Emma's breath caught in her throat. For a moment, she thought she might collapse. James's hand tightened on her shoulder, steadying her. Her tears returned, but this time they weren't from sorrow. They were from rage. The crowd shifted violently. Loyal investors whispered frantically, already distancing themselves. Society wives glared at Selina, who now shook visibly, her mascara streaking down her cheeks. Adrian's composure disintegrated. He shoved past Gideon, shouting, "This is entrapment. It's doctored, all of it. You think you can destroy me with cheap tricks?" But the evidence was undeniable. Every word was his, every sneer caught on camera. Emma's voice rose, trembling but fierce. You wanted to humiliate me tonight, Adrian. Instead, you've humiliated yourself before the world. The applause that followed was thunderous, shaking the hall like an earthquake. Adrian turned, eyes wild, searching for someone, anyone to defend him. But even Selena stepped back, shaking her head, distancing herself from the sinking ship. For the first time, Adrian looked afraid. Then, as the footage ended, Gideon turned toward the crowd. His expression was calm, but his words carried a razor's edge. This is enough to ruin him, but what I'm about to show next could put him in prison. The ballroom had turned into a storm. Guests no longer whispered, they shouted, cursed, demanded answers. The once untouchable Adrian Westwood stood cornered, sweat glistening on his forehead, his empire crumbling in real time. But Gideon's voice cut through the uproar like steel slicing silk. You've seen the affairs. You've seen the fraud, he said, his gaze sweeping across the crowd. But what you haven't seen yet is the crime. The projector screen flickered again. A new set of documents filled the massive display. Bank records, wire transfers, shell companies. The names of charities glowed on one side, while luxury accounts in the Caymans appeared on the other. Lines connected them like a spider's web, the money trail impossible to deny. This, Gideon declared, is embezzlement on a scale that qualifies as federal crime. Over 50 million siphoned from foundations meant for children's hospitals, cancer research, and schools. Gasps ricocheted around the room. A man shouted, "He stole from sick kids." Another yelled, "Arrest him." Adrian's mask shattered completely. He slammed his fists on the nearest table, sending glasses flying. "Lies!" he roared, voice raw and desperate. "All of it fabricated." But Gideon wasn't finished. He pressed another button, and a video file began to play. The screen filled with grainy footage of Adrian in a private meeting with two executives, his voice low but crystal clear. "Pay off the inspector. If he talks, he disappears. No one threatens me and gets away with it." The ballroom erupted in chaos. Women screamed. Men swore under their breath. Even reporters, seasoned to scandals, looked stunned. The implication wasn't just fraud. It was corruption, bribery, perhaps even worse. Emma's stomach churned, her hand gripping James's arm for support. Each word twisted deeper, revealing a man she no longer recognized. This wasn't just betrayal. This was evil. Selena's knees buckled, and she dropped into a chair, her body shaking. "I didn't know," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm. "I didn't know it went this far." Adrian whirled on her, fury blazing. "Shut up! You knew enough!" He grabbed her wrist, yanking her up roughly, but the crowd surged forward, outraged by the violence. Security finally moved, but not toward Gideon. They circled Adrian, hesitation clear in their eyes, as though uncertain whether to protect him or restrain him. Emma found her voice, trembling but fierce. "You thought you were invincible, Adrian, but tonight your lies have been stripped away, not just as a husband, but as a man. You are nothing." The applause that followed wasn't just polite, it was thunderous, furious, cathartic. People stood, clapping, shouting for justice. Adrian's chest heaved, his eyes darting wildly, searching for an escape. And then, over the chaos, a sharp, authoritative voice boomed from the entrance. "This event is over. Adrian Westwood, you're under investigation by the federal authorities." The ballroom doors burst open and a wave of authority swept in. Men and women in dark suits, badges flashing under the chandeliers, pushed through the crowd with precision. Their presence was undeniable. Federal agents. Conversations died instantly, the chaos silenced by the weight of the law entering the room. The lead agent, a tall man with a clipped voice, strode forward. "Adrian Westwood," he announced, his tone sharp as a blade. "You are under federal investigation for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy." Gasps rippled again through the crowd. Guests who had once clung to Adrian's coattails now shrank back, eager to distance themselves. Reporters surged forward, cameras capturing every second. It was the image of downfall, a billionaire CEO surrounded by lawmen in front of the city's elite. Adrian's face twisted in disbelief. "Investigation," he barked. "You can't come in here and humiliate me. This is my event." The agent didn't blink. "Correction, it was your event. Now it's a crime scene." The crowd murmured, some gasping, others laughing nervously. Emma stood still, one hand over her belly, the other gripping James's arm for strength. She couldn't look away. This was the man she had once trusted with her life, now reduced to a cornered predator. Adrian turned in desperation, searching for allies, but Selina pulled her hand free of his grasp, retreating into the shadows, shaking her head. Investors who had once sung his praises avoided his gaze. Even security refused to step forward. "No," Adrian snarled, voice cracking. "I won't be made a fool in my own house." He shoved a chair aside, his eyes blazing. "You think you can strip everything from me? I built this empire. I made every one of you rich. And you," he jabbed a finger at Emma, his face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful, pathetic woman, you did this to me." Emma flinched, but then straightened, meeting his glare with calm resolve. "No, Adrian, you did this to yourself." The crowd erupted in applause again, the sound thunderous, shaking the room with approval. Adrian's face went red, veins bulging in his temples. The lead agent stepped closer, slipping handcuffs from his belt. "It's over, Mr. Westwood. Come quietly." But Adrian didn't move. His chest heaved, his eyes darting wildly. "No," he spat. "Not like this. I won't be paraded out like a criminal." His hand shot to the table, snatching a steak knife from an abandoned plate. Gasps of horror echoed as he held it out, wild and dangerous, his eyes flickering between the agents and Emma. "Back away," Adrian roared. "No one touches me. I'll decide how this ends." The agents raised their hands cautiously, surrounding him but not striking. The crowd screamed, some rushing for the exits. Emma's heart pounded, fear tightening her chest as Adrian's gaze locked on her. And with the knife trembling in his grip, Adrian took a step toward his pregnant wife. The ballroom froze in collective terror. Chandeliers glittered above, casting fractured light across the scene, but no sparkle could soften the sight of Adrian Westwood. Knife in hand, eyes wild with rage. His tuxedo hung open, his once perfect mask of control shattered, leaving behind only desperation and madness. "Stay back!" Adrian bellowed, the blade trembling in his fist. "Every single one of you, stay back or I swear I'll—" His voice broke, choked by fury. Federal agents inched closer, hands raised in cautious negotiation. "Mr. Westwood," the lead agent said evenly, "put the weapon down. Don't make this worse." But Adrian wasn't listening. His gaze locked on Emma, and the world seemed to shrink until it was just the two of them. "You think you've won, don't you?" he snarled. "Parading me in front of these vultures, making me the villain." He took a step forward, the knife catching the chandelier's glow. "But without me, you're nothing. You've always been nothing." Emma's body trembled, but she stood her ground, one arm instinctively cradling her stomach. She could feel her baby shift inside her, a painful reminder of what was at stake. James whispered urgently, "Emma, step back," but she shook her head. Her eyes never left Adrian's. "No, Adrian," she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. "You're wrong. Without you, I'll finally be free." The crowd gasped. The words hung heavy in the air, sharp as any blade. For the first time Adrian faltered. His hand twitched, his eyes flashing with something between rage and disbelief. Selina, pale and trembling, cried out, "Adrian, stop! This isn't you!" But he snapped his head toward her, his voice a venomous hiss. "Shut up! This is exactly who I am." The agents moved another step closer, forming a protective wall in front of Emma, but Adrian growled, lifting the knife higher. "One more step and I'll make her pay." Emma's heart pounded, but instead of retreating, she stepped forward. Gasps erupted from the crowd. "Emma, no!" James hissed, but she didn't stop. Her voice rang out clear and unwavering. "If you want to finish this, Adrian, then look me in the eye while you do it. Show them all exactly who you are." Adrian froze. The room held its breath. Emma's defiance cut deeper than any weapon, stripping away the last shred of power he thought he had. For a moment, the knife wavered, his hand trembling violently. And then from the back of the room, Gideon's voice rang out like a shot. "Agents, now!" In an instant, the feds lunged, the crowd screamed, and Adrian's knife slashed downward. Chaos exploded. The agents surged forward as Adrian's arm slashed downward, the glint of steel flashing under the chandeliers. Screams tore through the ballroom, guests scattering in panic, chairs toppling, glasses shattering against marble floors. Emma braced for pain, her eyes locked on the knife. But at the last second, James thrust himself between them, his cane raised in defiance. The blade glanced off, slicing into the wood with a sickening crack. The old man staggered, but he held his ground. "Not tonight," James growled, his voice shaking with fury and age. Two agents tackled Adrian, forcing his arm back. The knife clattered to the floor, spinning across the marble. Gasps echoed as cameras zoomed in, flashes capturing the moment the mighty CEO was dragged down like a common criminal. Adrian roared, thrashing wildly, his once polished hair plastered to his sweat-soaked forehead. "Get off me! Do you know who I am? I'll destroy you all!" His voice cracked with desperation, no longer the booming command of a titan, but the shrill cry of a man stripped bare. Emma collapsed into James's arms, tears streaming down her face. "You saved me," she whispered. James, breathing heavily, managed a faint smile. You saved yourself, child. I just bought you a moment." The crowd, stunned into silence, erupted in applause. Some shouted for justice, others cried openly, overwhelmed by the spectacle of power undone. Even reporters, hardened by scandals, looked shaken as they scribbled furiously, documenting history in real time. But Adrian wasn't finished. As the agents hauled him upright, he twisted violently, spitting venom at Emma. "You think this is over? You think you've beaten me? I'll bury you in court. I'll ruin your name, your child, everything you love." Emma straightened, wiping her tears. Her voice, though soft, carried across the hall with the weight of finality. "You already ruined yourself, Adrian. And when our child grows up, they'll know the truth. You were never a man worth fearing." The crowd erupted again, stomping, clapping, their fury and admiration directed entirely at her. Adrian's eyes burned with hatred, but for the first time, Emma didn't flinch. The lead agent snapped the cuffs around Adrian's wrists, the metallic click echoing like a gavel. "Adrian Westwood, you are under arrest." Adrian lunged again, but the agent shoved him forward, forcing him toward the exit. The mighty CEO, once worshipped, now dragged like a criminal through his own empire's glittering gala. Cameras followed every step, immortalizing his disgrace. The image would be splashed across every paper, every screen by morning. Emma pressed a hand to her belly, whispering silently to her unborn child, "It's over. You're safe." But just as relief began to wash over her, a chilling sound broke through the applause. From the far side of the room, Selina screamed, not in fear, but in rage. She stood trembling, mascara streaking down her face, her hands clutching a phone. "No, Emma," Selina spat, her voice feral. "It's not over. Not until I take everything from you too." The thunder of applause still echoed when Selina's shrill voice cut through it like shattered glass. Her mascara-streaked cheeks and trembling hands betrayed panic, but her eyes burned with something more dangerous, rage. She clutched her phone high, her voice trembling with fury. "You all think Emma Carter is some poor little victim?" she screamed. "Then watch this!" Gasps rippled as the giant projector flickered once again. Selina's phone streamed directly to the screen. A video appeared, grainy but clear enough. Emma's face filled the frame, captured in a private moment in what looked like her own bedroom. She sat on the edge of her bed, her head buried in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. The crowd gasped louder. "What is this?" someone whispered. Selina's lips curled into a twisted smile. The world's perfect wife and mother-to-be isn't so perfect after all. This is who she really is, a pathetic, weak, broken woman who can't even keep her husband. Emma's heart lurched. Her private pain, something she had fought to hide, now broadcast across the glittering ballroom. She wanted to sink into the floor, to vanish. Her sobs echoed through the speakers, raw and vulnerable, making her feel stripped bare. But James stepped forward, his voice sharp. "You fool," he snapped at Selina. "You think showing her pain makes her weak? It makes her human." The audience murmured, some nodding, others uncertain. Selina, undeterred, raised her voice higher. "She's unstable. She can't raise a child. Adrian told me himself. She's unfit, fragile, hysterical. She doesn't deserve anything. Not the company, not the fortune, not even the baby she carries." Emma's chest tightened, her hand flying protectively to her stomach. The words were poison, crueler than any blade. For a moment the room tilted. Her breath caught. Was this how people saw her? Weak? Broken? But then Gideon stepped to her side. His deep voice resonated across the hall. "Enough. Everyone sees what this really is, a desperate attempt by a woman clinging to the last scraps of her power. Emma Carter's tears don't prove weakness. They prove she survived every cruelty thrown at her. That takes more strength than either of you." His glare seared through Selina, "will ever understand." The crowd erupted in applause again, this time louder, angrier, their support clearly with Emma. Some even booed Selina, their voices sharp with disgust. Selina's face twisted, panic breaking through her bravado, No, you don't understand. She doesn't deserve any of this. But Emma finally found her voice. Her tears dried, replaced by a fire burning brighter than the chandeliers above. You're wrong, Selina, she said firmly, her voice carrying over the crowd. I may have cried. I may have suffered, but I endured. And unlike you, I don't destroy lives. I protect them. The room roared, drowning Selina's last frantic screams. Her phone slipped from her hand, clattering to the floor. And then, as the chaos swelled, an agent picked it up, brows furrowing as he studied the screen. Emma, he said gravely, there's another video on here, and it's not about you. It's about Adrian. The agent's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. There's another file here. It's not about Emma. It's about Adrian. The room fell silent again, the crowd hanging on every word. The agent tapped the phone, and the projector lit up once more. At first, the footage was shaky, clearly taken in secret. Adrian appeared on screen, seated in a dimly lit bar. His voice was low, slurred with alcohol, but unmistakable. Selina sat beside him, recording discreetly, her phone angled just enough to capture his face. They'll never touch me, Adrian sneered. The feds, the board, not even Emma. She's too naive. That baby, just leverage. If she gets in my way, I'll take it all. I've done worse. Gasps spread like wildfire. Emma's knees weakened, James tightening his grip on her arm to steady her. Her unborn child, her reason for enduring every humiliation, reduced to a bargaining chip in Adrian's drunken confession. The video continued, Adrian's voice dripping with arrogance. Selina, you're smarter than she'll ever be. Stick with me, and you'll never want for anything. I'll bury Emma legally, emotionally, financially. By the time I'm done, she won't even have a name. Selina's face, caught briefly in the corner of the frame, looked smug, complicit. But here and now, she trembled as the room turned on her too. A woman in the front row gasped, covering her mouth. He used his own wife? His own child? The audience's anger boiled over. People shouted, booed, some even throwing napkins and programs toward Adrian, who stood cuffed and cornered, his eyes wide with fury. Fake, Adrian bellowed, his voice cracking. That video is fake. She manipulated it. You can't believe her. But the evidence was undeniable. His voice, his face, his words. No spin could erase the venom he had spewed. Emma felt a cold calm wash over her. The tears were gone, replaced by something deeper, resolve. She looked directly at Adrian. You called our child leverage. Tonight that child becomes the reason I'll never let you destroy another life again. The room erupted into cheers, furious applause shaking the chandeliers overhead. For once, Adrian's voice was drowned completely by the roar of people who had once bowed to him. The lead agent stepped forward, lifting the phone as evidence. This seals it. Westwood, you're not just under investigation anymore. You're going down. Adrian's chest heaved, his face twisted in desperation. He lunged toward Selina, yanking her arm violently. You set me up. You recorded me. Selina shrieked, struggling to pull free, mascara streaking down her cheeks. You promised me everything. The crowd jeered, disgusted by both of them. But then, in the chaos, Adrian's voice dropped, cold and venomous, a whisper that cut through the noise. If I'm going down, Emma, I'll take you with me. The room erupted into chaos. Adrian's venomous whisper hung in the air like poison, chilling Emma to her core. Federal agents tightened their grip on him, but the fire in his eyes burned hotter, wilder, as though the thought of losing everything had finally snapped the last thread of his sanity. Get him out of here, the lead agent barked. But Adrian twisted violently, wrenching himself halfway free. In the split second of confusion, he shoved Selina hard, sending her sprawling to the floor. Guests screamed as he lunged, not at the agents, not at Gideon, but straight at Emma. Emma gasped, stumbling backward as his bound hands clawed toward her. James stepped forward with his cane, but Adrian slammed into him with brutal force, sending the old man crashing to the ground. The crowd cried out in horror. Emma! James wheezed, clutching his side, but she couldn't reach him. Adrian loomed closer, his breath ragged, his face twisted into something almost inhuman. You ruined me, he roared. You and that worthless child? You think you can humiliate me and walk away? No one walks away from Adrian Westwood. Emma's heart thundered. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but her feet refused to move. Her hand instinctively cradled her stomach. For the first time, she wasn't just protecting herself, she was protecting her baby. Adrian lunged again, his cuffed wrists swinging like blunt weapons. But before he could strike, Gideon stepped between them. The impact rattled through the hall as Adrian slammed into Gideon's chest. Gideon grunted, but he didn't fall. His voice was low, deadly calm. "Touch her, and it's the last thing you ever do." The agent surged in, tackling Adrian to the ground. He thrashed like a trapped animal, spitting curses, his voice echoing through the hall. "Emma, this isn't over. I'll drag you down with me. I'll make sure you have nothing." The crowd booed, their fury drowning out his threats. For the first time, Adrian wasn't feared, he was despised. Emma trembled, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Gideon reached for her hand, steadying her, his touch firm and reassuring. "It's over," he murmured. "He can't hurt you anymore." But Emma shook her head, tears brimming. "No, he's not finished. I know him. He'll fight until his last breath." The lead agent snapped the cuffs tighter, forcing Adrian upright. His face was flushed, his hair disheveled, but his eyes still burned with venom. He spat on the floor, glaring at Emma as if she were the executioner at his gallows. And then, as they dragged him toward the doors, he laughed, a low, chilling sound that silenced even the angriest voices in the crowd. "Enjoy your victory, Emma," he sneered, "because tomorrow morning the whole world will know your secret." Adrian's laugh echoed through the ballroom long after the agents dragged him toward the doors. It was the kind of laugh that didn't fade. It lingered, crawling under the skin of everyone present. His last words, "The whole world will know your secret," hung in the air like smoke. Emma's body stiffened, her mind racing. A secret? What secret? She had nothing left to hide. Her humiliation, her tears, her broken marriage, everything had been laid bare tonight. What else could Adrian possibly use against her? The crowd murmured restlessly, their whispers rising into waves of speculation. What did he mean? Does Emma have something to hide? Could it be true? Emma's chest tightened as the attention swung back to her. She had been the victor only moments ago, the symbol of resilience and truth. Now doubt flickered in the eyes of strangers once again. James, still steadying himself on his cane after Adrian's attack, leaned close and whispered, "Don't let his poison shake you. It's a tactic, empty threats from a desperate man." But Gideon's eyes narrowed. "Not necessarily," he muttered. "Men like Adrian don't waste their last words. If he said he has something, then it exists." Emma's heart lurched. Her mind flickered back to sleepless nights, hushed conversations, documents her father once mentioned but never explained. Could Adrian have found something buried in her family's past? The agents forced Adrian toward the exit, but he twisted once more, shouting over the chaos. "Tomorrow morning, front page, Emma Carter, fraud just like me." Gasps tore through the crowd. Reporters scrambled for their phones, dialing editors desperate to verify his claim. The applause that had once celebrated Emma now fractured into nervous murmurs. "No," Emma whispered, shaking her head. "He's lying. He has to be lying." Selena, still crumpled on the floor, let out a broken laugh. "Oh, he's not lying," she croaked, her voice hoarse but dripping with venom. "Adrian told me everything, said your precious family fortune wasn't as clean as you thought. He kept files, Emma. Files that could ruin you." Emma's blood ran cold. She dropped into a chair, her hands trembling. "No," she whispered again, but even she could hear the doubt in her own voice. Gideon knelt in front of her, his voice steady. "Listen to me. Whatever he has will face it. You are not alone anymore." Emma looked into his eyes, searching for strength. She felt it there, steady and unyielding, but the fear gnawed at her anyway. James tapped his cane firmly on the floor. "Secrets or no secrets, Emma, tonight you showed the world your courage. Don't let him steal that from you." But before she could answer, a reporter rushed forward, waving their phone. "Breaking news," he shouted. "A leak just went live. Adrian's files are online." The ballroom erupted into chaos once more, and as the crowd scrambled for answers, Emma realized her nightmare wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Phones lit up across the ballroom as notifications pinged in rapid succession. Reporters hunched over their screens, gasping and murmuring, their faces illuminated by the blue glow. The words spread quickly, like wildfire. Adrian leaked documents. They're about Emma's family. Oh my God, the Carters are involved. Emma's stomach dropped. She clutched the edge of her chair, her knuckles white. The name she had carried with pride, her father's legacy, was now being dragged through the mud in front of hundreds. One reporter shouted over the chaos, reading directly from their screen. According to these files, the Carter family business laundered money decades ago through overseas accounts. Funds that were supposed to rebuild schools after the hurricane were rerouted into private investments. The crowd gasped louder. Eyes turned on Emma again, some filled with suspicion, others with pity. "No," Emma whispered, shaking her head. "That's not possible. My father dedicated his life to charity. He wouldn't." Selina, her face twisted in triumph despite the mascara streaks, laughed bitterly. "Looks like saintly Emma Carter isn't so saintly after all. Like husband, like wife." Emma's chest constricted. The air felt thin, the chandeliers spinning above her. "He's lying," she said, louder this time. "Adrian forged this. He always wanted to destroy me. He knew my family was my strength." Gideon stepped forward, his voice cutting through the noise. "Listen carefully," he commanded. The crowd stilled, reporters lowering their phones slightly. Gideon's eyes blazed as he addressed them. "These documents come from a man just exposed for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Are you really going to take his word as truth without verification?" Murmurs shifted, some nodding in agreement. But doubt still lingered, heavy and poisonous. James tapped his cane firmly on the floor. "Emma, your father was a good man. I worked beside him. If there was wrongdoing, it wasn't his doing. Don't let Adrian twist his memory." Emma's eyes burned with tears. The pain of seeing her father's name smeared cut deeper than anything Adrian had ever done to her personally. Her child, her future, now tangled in the shadow of a past she never knew existed. The lead agent raised his voice, sharp and authoritative. "We will investigate these files thoroughly. Until then, no assumptions will be made." But reporters had already begun storming toward the exits, dialing numbers, their voices frantic. By morning, the Carter name would be plastered across headlines worldwide. Emma rose shakily to her feet, her voice trembling but clear. "I will face whatever truth comes out, but know this, whether my family stumbled in the past or not, I will not repeat their mistakes. My child will grow up free from Adrian's corruption." Applause broke through again, scattered but growing, as some guests stood in support. Emma straightened her back, determination replacing despair. But then from the doorway a new figure appeared, an older woman with piercing eyes, clutching a leather briefcase. She looked directly at Emma and said, "Your father left me something, Emma, something he never wanted the world to see." The ballroom fell into stunned silence as the older woman stepped forward, her heels clicking against the marble floor with deliberate weight. Every eye followed her, curiosity and suspicion rippling through the crowd. She looked composed, but her expression carried the heaviness of secrets long kept. Emma's breath caught. Something in the woman's gaze felt familiar, comforting, yet unsettling. "Who are you?" Emma asked, her voice trembling. The woman stopped a few feet away, lifting the leather briefcase onto a nearby table. She straightened her shoulders. "My name is Eleanor Gray. I was your father's personal attorney for nearly 20 years. Before his death, he entrusted me with this." She tapped the briefcase gently, "and he made me promise to deliver it to you when the time was right." The crowd leaned forward, murmurs swelling like waves. Emma's knees weakened, but she stood tall. "Why now?" she whispered. Eleanor's eyes softened. "Because Adrian has forced it into the light. He twisted half-truths into weapons. But your father knew the full truth would one day matter." With careful hands, Eleanor opened the briefcase and pulled out a thick folder, its edges worn with age. She flipped it open, revealing rows of documents, handwritten letters, financial ledgers, signed affidavits. "Your father discovered corruption within his own company decades ago," Eleanor explained, her voice carrying through the hall. "Yes, money was laundered through overseas accounts, but not by him. It was his partners, men who threatened to destroy everything if he exposed them. He kept silent publicly to protect you, but privately, he built evidence." Gasps rippled through the room. Emma's chest heaved as she stared at the papers, tears welling in her eyes. Her father hadn't betrayed the family legacy. He had sacrificed his reputation to shield her from the storm. Eleanor continued, her tone firm. "These files contain proof, names, dates, transactions, enough to not only clear the Carter name, but to implicate powerful figures who thought their sins were buried forever. Adrian stumbled upon fragments of this history and twisted them to smear you. But with these, the truth will stand." Reporters scrambled to capture every word. cameras flashing like lightning. Emma's tears spilled, but for the first time that night, they were tears of relief. She whispered, almost to herself, "He never failed me. Even after death, he protected me." James placed a trembling hand on her shoulder, pride shining in his tired eyes. "Your father would be proud, Emma, and tonight, the world will finally know the kind of man he truly was." The crowd broke into applause, louder and more resolute than before. Emma straightened, clutching the folder to her chest. For the first time, she felt not just vindicated, but empowered. But before the applause could swell further, the ballroom doors slammed open again. Agents rushed in, their faces grim. "Emma Carter," one of them announced, "you need to come with us immediately. Adrian has escaped custody." Gasps filled the ballroom as the agent's words echoed. "Adrian has escaped custody." Panic rippled through the crowd. Guests clutched their pearls, reporters shouted into phones, and security scrambled toward the exits. Emma's blood ran cold. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she clutched her belly protectively. "He's coming," she whispered. "He won't stop until—" "Until he's stopped," Gideon interrupted firmly. He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, "and this time he won't win." Moments later, the heavy doors slammed open once again. Adrian stumbled inside, his tuxedo torn, his cuffs dangling from one wrist where he had broken free. His eyes were wild, burning with fury and desperation. The once polished CEO was gone. In his place stood a broken man clinging to the last threads of power. "Emma!" he bellowed, his voice raw. "You think you've destroyed me? No. I'll take back everything. Your fortune, your child, your very name. If I can't rule this empire, no one will." The crowd screamed as he lunged forward, knocking over tables, glasses shattering under his feet. Agents rushed after him, but Adrian was driven by madness, his gaze locked only on Emma. Emma trembled, but she did not run. She stood tall, clutching the folder of her father's legacy to her chest. Her voice rang out, clear and steady. "Adrian, listen to yourself. You've lost everything, not because of me, but because of your own greed. Look around you. No one here fears you anymore." Adrian froze for a fraction of a second, scanning the crowd. The faces that once admired him now glared with disgust, their eyes filled with contempt. The applause earlier had turned into chants. "Justice! Justice!" His face twisted. "They're nothing," he roared. "They're parasites who lived off me." Gideon stepped forward, blocking Adrian's path. "No, Adrian, they lived despite you." The agents closed in, but Adrian lunged one final time, reaching for Emma with a guttural cry. Emma didn't flinch. She met his madness with calm steel. "This ends tonight." At that moment, James swung his cane once more, striking Adrian across the knees. Adrian collapsed to the floor, screaming in rage as the agents finally restrained him, pinning him down. His voice cracked, the roar of a fallen titan reduced to a pitiful rasp. "You'll regret this, Emma," he spat weakly, his head pressed to the marble. "You'll regret—" But his words were drowned out by thunderous applause. The ballroom shook as people rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, chanting her name. Emma stood tall, her tears shimmering under the chandeliers. She held the folder high. "My father's truth will clear his name. My child will grow up free of his shadow. And every woman watching tonight, know this. You are not weak. You are not powerless. No man has the right to strip away your dignity." The applause swelled, wave after wave of catharsis washing through the hall. Gideon's eyes softened with pride. James, though weary, smiled through his pain. As the agents dragged Adrian out for the last time, Emma whispered to her unborn child, "We are free." And for the first time in years, she believed it. So that's where our story comes to an end. My dear friends, you're still here with me, aren't you? If you've stayed all the way until now, it means something in this story has touched your heart in a very real way. Maybe it reminded you of your own struggles, your own battles, or the times when you felt humiliated and powerless. But let me tell you this. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Emma's tears didn't make her weak. They showed her humanity. And in the end, she rose from the ashes of betrayal stronger, freer, and unbreakable. That is the same power each of us carries. No matter the humiliation, no matter the loss, you can choose not to be destroyed by it. You can choose, as Marcus Aurelius wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. So if this story reached you tonight, Let it be more than just entertainment. Let it be a mirror, a reminder that even in your darkest hours, there is always a way forward. And now, my wonderful friends, if you felt something here, please like this video, share it with someone who might need this message, and subscribe so you'll never miss another story. Because sometimes, one story can change the way we see our entire life.
Thank you.